That is what it's going to take for you to become financially free. A commitment to hard work combined with careful planning and consistency to the execution of your plan. For our nation to achieve the illustrious title, however, of self-sufficient and financially free will require that we, the citizenry, tote the necessary heavy loads. It's time to begin the purging process so that the waves of freedom may lash against our shores, flushing out all of the self-hate syndrome which has held you, Mr./Miss Citizen, from becoming free. I am Anthony Burrows, your host for life and finances with some sacrifice and service. Hasn't this been an interesting week, to say the least? COVID-19 cases have cleared the 1,000 mark now. Doctors, nurses, lab techs, security officers, and others making up the medical establishment team must be commended. Each case, with each passing day, is taking us closer to the testing of our fragile democracy. Our system already as it is very brittle due to the centeredness of the PM position. Unlike the heavenly system, where there is shared governance, ours does not allow for that. In our instance now, we have both the PM and his deputy are in self-quarantine. Further, it's circulating that maybe a minister or two may also be self-quarantined. My goodness, God forbids should the PM become severely ill or worse, were to pass away. The impact from the confusion, the rows, and the fights will tell on us for generations to come. Word has it that a group of citizens through the courts will challenge the constitutionality of the emergency COVID-19 lockdown orders. Many are known to doubt the efficiency of our judiciary. Should such a case present itself, it will be an interesting event, maybe even a spectacle. Now, personally, I'm in support of the lockdowns. I don't like them, but how many other options are there? Here we go. The issue under exploration for today is in the form of a question, being, what is a Bahamian life really worth? Over the past week, social media has been blowing up with harsh language aimed at the national leadership for the freeing up, they call it, of our economy. The impact of the current economic depression has many willing to take any risk so that they may be able to carry on business as before. The lockdowns, in a sense, is pointing to the perceived value of a Bahamian man/woman, girl/boy, in that there are pleas and cries for tourists/visitors to return. And that brings me to my first point, assessing the worth of a Bahamian life. Now, first step, 70% of government revenue is generated by tourism. That big, gigantic, nice airport we have down there, departure taxes paying for that. Tourism accounts for 40% of our nation's GDP, and that's our gross domestic product, which is the total value of all goods and services produced in this country in a given year. 40% of it is because of tourism. 60% of Bahamians are employed in a tourism-related field. 92% of everything in our country is imported. Therefore, foreign currency is required. And if you've noticed, since the lockdowns, the hardest thing to find is a US, even so much a US quarter. I wouldn't talk about a $10, $50, or $100 bill. The next item is that 7.2 million visitors came to these shores last year, which was a record. Now, during the border closing and lockdowns, and I should say during these lockdowns, the government is losing, just in tourism revenue, $9 million a day, $63 million a week, $252 million a month, and $3.2 billion a year. Given all of that data, it is clear why the borders were reopened. That happened the last time was in the hope of Bahamians earning their living by being able to host foreign visitors and tourists again. Thing is, life doesn't always go as planned. You, Mr. Bahamian, Miss Bahamian, went abroad, was embarrassed to wear your mask while abroad because the Americans weren't wearing theirs. Now, after purchasing several cases of potato chips, packs of toiletries, 60-inch flat screen TV, and one or two maybe you went to see doctors, you returned home and Mr. Surge show up, or Mr. Spike. If COVID-19 remains with us for the unexpected 2 to 3 more years, it may come down to us experiencing death by starvation or by COVID-19. These are some of the things that happen to countries when the locals do not own their economy. Our constant high levels of unemployment, which is normally between 15 and 20%, and the massive size of the civil service is tied directly to us not being owners of our economy. See, in this way, majority rule has proven to be a farce and a great pretense for many of us. The pursuance and continuation of the colonial education system and the taking of political power without consideration for us to become owners and not just labor has placed us in a state of servitude and on a treadmill to nowhere. The mirage, I call it, all a belief developed has been the attainment of middle class status, which is the purchasing of a home, and for many of us, we spend 60% of our income just to own a home. Don't get me wrong, home ownership, because you know I'm a believer in the ownership of land. Home ownership is a way to build generational wealth, but do it within your means. Then everybody want to have 2 cars. Everybody, in our case, given, I guess, the struggle within the public school system, everybody got to have their children in private school who can afford it, wearing nice clothes and get a job, an office in a job. Oh, pardon me, get an office job. In comes my wife somehow now, but don't worry about that. She is going back out. The real shackle breaking belief got lost somewhere between the Emancipation Declaration and independence. Being middle class without a consistent savings and investment plan limits generation to a life of inadequacy. There will always be a day late and a dollar short. They will never accomplish financial independence in this manner. As a result of misplaced values, the Bahamian collective worth is viewed as less than the owners of our economy. Political freedom in the absence of economic power by any description is still slavery. And slavery is when you are dictated to and controlled by another. The present system under which we are under, for Bahamians, have 90% of us with less than $1,000 in our bank accounts, and this is after many years of working. Now I'll go to number 2. Along the system, the worth of any Bahamian life is now tied to your societal structure, which I've already pointed out is one of servitude. Based on this structure, from Grand Bahama down to Inagua, from which I was born, is a replica of the old plantation system. I realize that for some of you, such a statement is difficult to swallow, but deep in your heart of hearts, you know I'm speaking the truth. Because of our reliance on others for the provision of our food, medicine, energy, along with other goods and services, has placed us in the deficit position. See, the plantation system is based on owners of the land and businesses being on top. So we got all, in our instance, you got all the hoteliers, they are foreign, and by and large the financiers, they are foreign. And in fact, foreigners own 85% of the high value land in our country, and they own 95% of the hotels. Then its second step in the plantation system comes down to your race and ethnicity. Well, I don't even have to go into that because you know where that stands. Oh Lord, colorism. That's the third step on the rung of the ladder. And colorism has to do with the shade of complexion, even though we are all black. It's the lighter as you go. And I'll never forget when I went to the prison as a health inspector to conduct an inspection many, many, many years ago. After doing almost 3 hours, completing the inspection, coming towards the end, I came into the courtyard of maximum security where guys would do their exercising who get that 1 hour a day when they come out. And to my surprise, there were about, say, 40 guys in the general area. And when I look, there just stood out this one light-skinned, or I should say light-complexioned young man among the other 39. And you know what? That is when it hit me. Our society is rigged and stacked against those of us who have the darker complexion. Now, you may not want to accept that, but when you go to the prison today, every 9.5 out of every 10 individual has the darker complexion of our society. Then the fourth step on the plantation system rung is gender. And in our case, you see the men are on top. All our political leaders, 97% of them or a little less, are male. But the thing is, women refuse to vote for another woman. So I don't know how that's going to work out. And then finally on that ladder is occupation. That's where you got your lawyers, your doctors. And in this instance, it doesn't matter the colorism and all that. It's just having that profession. And in the days of the slavery, rum makers, inventors, gifted cooks. Then you had the trainers of dogs and roosters for fighting if the master was a gambling person. All of those were high valued occupation. See, the societal structure has in many instances damaged the Bahamian psyche, resulting in self-hate, the crab syndrome. And this is my thing about clinging to the old colonial educational system. How dare we cling to a system that was never intended to support and help us? We must abandon this current structure of education that we have. It's nothing about us, neither is it for us. But anyhow, and this is what's causing many of us not to realize our dreams and to become financially free, because it's tied to this which tells us you are not supposed to be financially free, much less be free. And again, the colorism comes in through this same educational structure. I will never forget a good friend of mine, while I think I was in grade 11, maybe grade 12, in A.F. Adderley. And I had this friend, and he used to talk about this girlfriend that he liked. But the thing is, he would just talk on the phone with her for about 4 weeks, and she told her mother about him and the whole 9 yards, and he would talk to the mom and all now and again. So he said to me, Tony, this weekend I'm going to go and pay her a visit. We don't have it planned. I'm just going to go and spend a couple of hours, after and do my chores, run home. I said, well, boy, good luck. Anyhow, I say, well, things looking up. So when he got to the house, he knocked on the door, and then, who is it? He said his name. The mother came to the door, opened the door, and she said, who are you? He said, hey, I'm so-and-so. I come to see this one. The mother looked at him, looked at his feet first, looked at his head, looked back at his feet, and said, "Boy, you better try hard, get from my door, because my daughter needs someone to lighten her complexion." Boom! And slammed the door on his face. Now, when he told me that, I could not believe it. You know, being 16, 17, I mean, he didn't think things like that would happen in our country. And then, as a result, too, with the same educational system, it has led to the devaluing of our fellow citizens in the eyes of each other. You know, when I see the times, as I see police, and I'm sure they may have their reasons, when they gun down young black boys like myself. Well, I ain't young, but gun down our young black men. And when you see the amount of bullets that have been fired, and you say, "Oh my Lord, there is no value on the lives such as ours." But then I can reflect on the time a tourist or a couple of tourists beat a policeman pretty badly. I think it was in Senior Frog or somewhere. Basically, they came politely, arrested him very politely, took him to Central Station, booked him through the process. Of course, he didn't sleep in the cell. And then the next thing was that went to court the next day, fined a couple of dollars, and put on the plane. Of course, the embassy helped to accommodate all of that. But that's because we don't put the value and worth on each other. So as we go forward, the challenge for you and I is the placement of worth and value on one another. That's the only way that we can become a somebody. It must begin inside of you. With COVID-19 spiraling out of control, Bahamians everywhere are calling on the government to produce a COVID-19 action plan. Governments are incapable of saving themselves. Do you think they could save you? There are 119 governments on this planet. Of that amount, maybe 5% of them actually serve their citizens. Well, I can never forget a South Korean saying, "Once I get home, my government will take care of me." I was never so shocked. In Washington, they swear to the Constitution. In Beijing, they swear to the Communist Party. And in Nassau, they swear to the Queen. In neither of these, there's a mention of the people. Government's interest is normally the retention of power. And that is why all governments everywhere are struggling with this pandemic, because they are now required to be of service to the people. And for most, that's unfamiliar territory. And if you heard me in the past, government's primary ability has always been to spend endlessly, borrow money with no conscience, rack up deficits, then venture to the backyard where the tax increase money tree is planted and start collecting, then again to repeat the cycle over. Now it's up to you and I as concerned citizens, again, to do the heavy lifting in order to build the necessary psychological and physical and financial muscles necessary to get us out of this pandemic. See, the economy can be reopened tomorrow without a single glitch. All that's required is for every single individual to wear their mask and keep their distance. And business could go on as usual. Buses, taxis, everything could do that if we were to follow that. See, the commonality of oneness is needed, as opposed to party colors and traditional dividing forces. See, the God of heaven wants the Bahamas to be a bright, prosperous, shining light on a hill for the rest of the world to see. But self-sabotage and belief that we don't deserve the best has held us back. Now, as I wrap up, again, my book of the week is Hezekiah's Independence by Keith Russell, a Bahamian author, and it can be gotten at the University of the Bahamas bookstore. Let's support our own. I wish to make a final request of you for the coming week. Go online and look at the Immovable Property Act of 1981 and the International Persons Land Holding Act of 1993. Until next time, may the God of heaven and his Son, the Christ, bless and prosper you.